On the streets of Los Angeles, nights move fast, engines roar louder than common sense, and one bad decision can launch a war at full speed. Here, respect is earned a quarter mile at a time, and trust is worth more than cash. In the middle of that world is a young cop chasing a crew of highway thieves, but the closer he gets to them, the harder it becomes to remember which side he is really on. The story begins with a violent truck hijacking on a dark highway. A group of black Honda Civics appears out of nowhere and boxes in a moving semi. Their timing is perfect, their driving is fearless. In seconds, the crew slips into the trailer, steals a load of expensive electronics, and disappears before anyone can stop them. The attack is clean, fast, and terrifying, and it is only the latest in a string of similar robberies. The police believe the thieves are a street racing crew. The jobs demand speed, skill, and nerves of steel, so the theory makes sense. To get close to the racers, the police send in Brian O'Connor, a young officer with a calm face, a quick mind, and a deeper connection to driving than he lets on. His mission is simple in theory: infiltrate the local racing scene, identify the criminals, and help take them down. In practice, it is much messier. Brian first steps into that world at a late-night street race gathering. The place is packed with loud cars, loud music, and people living with the kind of reckless energy that makes every moment feel like it could explode. He's an outsider trying to blend in, and his car is his only introduction. He lines up for a race against Edwin, a local driver, and wins attention immediately. But the real moment comes when he challenges Dominic Toretto. Dominic is the center of this world. He is not just the best driver there, he is the man everyone watches. Calm, intense, and impossible to ignore, he leads with a quiet authority that makes people follow without question. Brian loses the race to Dominic, but not before showing enough talent to be noticed. Then the police crash the event, sending everyone fleeing into the night. Brian nearly gets arrested with the rest, but he uses his skills behind the wheel to help Dominic escape. That choice changes everything. He gets Dominic back to safety, and in return, Dominic offers him a chance to stay close. Brian is no longer just some random guy with a decent car, he is now somebody who earned a little respect. At Dominic and Mia Toretto home, Brian meets the people who make up Dominic's inner circle. There's Letty Ortiz, fierce and fearless, who shares Dominic's love of risk and speed. There is Leon, quiet but watchful. And there is Vince, Dominic's longtime friend, who immediately dislikes Brian and sees him as a threat. Brian also meets Mia, Dominic's younger sister, who works nearby and seems tired of the danger around her, even if she cannot fully escape it. As Brian spends more time with the group, he starts learning how their world works. Dominic rules by loyalty. He expects his people to stand together no matter what. Around him, racing is not just a hobby, it is identity, family, escape, and power. For Brian, who entered this scene as an undercover cop, the deeper he gets, the more complicated his job becomes. Back at the police station, Brian reports to Sergeant Tanner and works alongside Agent Bilkins from federal law enforcement. They are focused on the hijackings and convinced Dominic crew is responsible. The evidence is thin, but the pattern lines up too neatly for them to ignore. Brian is told to keep digging, stay close, and find proof. Meanwhile, Brian tries to establish himself in the street racing scene. He wants a better car, one fast enough to prove he belongs. That leads him to a local mechanic and organizer named Harry, who knows the racers well and helps Brian build a machine that can compete. Brian is not just pretending to be a driver. He genuinely loves this life, and that makes the act more believable. It also makes the mission more dangerous, because every step deeper into this world feels less like work and more like temptation. Tension builds between Brian and Vince almost immediately. Vince is jealous, suspicious, and deeply protective of Dominic's world. He does not trust newcomers, especially one who seems to be getting close to Mia. Brian, on the other hand, keeps his cool and refuses to back down. Their conflict simmers in almost every scene they share. Then comes Race Wars, a massive desert gathering where drivers from all over bring their fastest cars and biggest egos. It is part competition, part festival, and part battlefield for reputation. Brian arrives there with Dominic crew, still trying to figure out whether these are truly the people he is hunting. At Race Wars, the story opens up. More racers, more rivals, more pressure. Dominic is dealing with outside challenges, Brian is balancing his double life, and the federal team is waiting for a mistake they can exploit. Race Wars also brings Dominic old enemy back into focus. Johnny Tran, another respected figure in the racing world, runs his own crew and has a hostile history with Dominic. The feud between them carries years of resentment and the police seize on that. They suspect Johnny, then Dominic, then swing back again, each theory built on fragments and instinct more than certainty. Brian, desperate to produce results, helps direct attention toward Johnny Tran. A raid hits one of Johnny's properties and the police find stolen goods. For a brief moment it looks like the case is solved, but the victory does not last. The stolen items are not the ones from the truck hijackings. The real thieves are still out there. Brian has pushed the investigation in the wrong direction, and now both law enforcement and the racers are more suspicious than ever. That failure matters because the clock is running out. The truck drivers who have been targeted are getting more desperate. One of them arms himself heavily and prepares to defend his cargo at any cost. The next hijacking will not be easy, and if Dominic Crew is involved, somebody may not come back alive. While the investigation stalls, Brian and Mia grow closer. Unlike many others in Dominic orbit, Mia sees something deeper in Brian. Their connection feels real, not like part of an act. Brian begins to imagine a life where he is not just using people to make a case. Mia represents warmth and calm in a world built on danger. That only sharpens his conflict. If he does his job fully, he will destroy the people she loves. If he walks away from the job, he betrays the badge and everything it stands for. Then the story turns with Dominic's personal history. Brian learns about the trauma that shaped him. Years earlier, Dominic's father died in a racing crash after another driver made a reckless move. Dominic witnessed the loss and the pain never left him. That moment helps explain why Dominic lives the way he does. Racing is not only adrenaline for him, it is grief, rage, memory, and control. He pushes his cars to the limit because he has spent years trying to outrun the moment that broke his family apart. Brian and Dominic share a late conversation that becomes one of the emotional core scenes of the story. Dominic opens up just enough to let Brian see the man behind the image. He talks about speed and the feeling of total freedom inside a single moment. Brian listens, and for perhaps the first time, he sees Dominic less as a suspect and more as a human being shaped by loss and loyalty. That bond becomes the biggest threat to the mission. At Race Wars, the pressure finally cracks. Mia discovers Brian's true identity. She feels betrayed and furious because the man she trusted has been lying from the start. Brian does not have time to explain much. He now believes Dominic Crew is about to make another run and he needs Mia's help to find them before it is too late. In a desperate move, he reveals everything and begs her to tell him where Dominic has gone. Mia gives in not because she trusts the badge, but because she knows what will happen if no one stops the crew. Brian rushes out to find Dominic, Letty, Leon, and Vince as they prepare for another truck robbery. This time the truck driver fights back hard. The robbery turns into chaos on the open road. Gunfire erupts. The driver swerves wildly. Everything falls apart. Vince ends up trapped and badly injured, hanging from the side of the truck while the vehicle tears down the highway. Brian has a choice. He can stay hidden and protect his cover or reveal himself to save a man who hates him. He chooses the man. Brian calls for emergency help, exposes his identity, and risks the whole operation to rescue Vince. In that instant, the mask comes off completely. He is a cop and everyone knows it. The job is a disaster for Dominic Crew. They barely escape alive. Letty crashes and is injured. Vince is taken away for medical treatment. Leon disappears. Dominic realizes Brian is the undercover officer who infiltrated his family, and the betrayal cuts deep. Any fragile trust between them is shattered. Now the story becomes a race toward consequences. Dominic is furious, wounded by Brian's lies, and determined not to be taken alive. Brian tries to stop the situation from getting even worse, but the damage is done. The law is closing in, the crew is broken, and Dominic has only one way left to respond. He goes after Johnny Tran, believing Tran set events in motion or took advantage of the chaos. Their rivalry, already boiling, reaches its breaking point. What follows is a violent pursuit through the streets. Dominic and Brian chase Johnny and his cousin on motorcycles. The sequence is fast, raw, and personal. This is no longer about evidence or undercover strategy. It is revenge, anger, and survival colliding at high speed. In the end, Johnny is killed and the road behind them is left scattered with wreckage and final consequences. But the true ending belongs to Brian and Dominic. After everything that has happened, after the lies, the bond, the betrayals, and the bloodshed, the two men face each other one last time at a railroad crossing. Dominic is ready to leave. Brian could arrest him right there and finally complete the mission he was sent to do. Instead, they settle at the only way that makes sense in their world: one more race. They line up at the edge of the street and launch forward. It is not about winning money or bragging rights anymore. It is about identity. It is about everything that has built between them. Engines scream, traffic blurs, and the crossing ahead becomes a deadly test of nerve. Dominic pushes harder, chasing that same edge he has always lived on. Brian stays with him. The train barrels in. At the last possible second, they clear the tracks, but Dominic's car is hit by a truck moments later and flips violently. Brian runs to the wreck. Dominic survives, stunned and hurt, but alive. The police are on the way. The choice is right in front of Brian. He can finish his duty and arrest Dominic, or he can honor the connection that changed him. Brian looks at Dominic, then hands over the keys to his own car and tells him to go. Dominic drives away, escaping into the distance while Brian stands alone, having sacrificed his case for a man he was supposed to destroy. It is the end of the mission, but also the beginning of something much larger. Because in a world built on speed, crime, and loyalty, Brian has learned that the line between right and wrong is not always painted clearly on the road. That is what makes this story hit harder than a simple movie about cars. Under the races and the roaring engines, it is really about trust, family, and the cost of choosing your own code. And by the end, the fastest thing on screen is not the cars, it is the moment everything changes forever.